Hi guys, and welcome back here to the Dev Realm, and today we're gonna be carrying on our series. And if you guys remember what we did in the last episode, we created basically a way of saving our character variables, hair, male, gender, and name, and all sorts. Now today we're gonna be creating the save game function, and we're gonna create the screen where you're gonna be able to find your player name, load that to your game, and then maybe play with the character. I'm not sure if you're gonna get to that on this because it's gonna be quite a lot. But anyway, so now that we created this on text change, I'm just gonna right click and I'm gonna collapse this node and I'm gonna call this name selection, or sorry, name selection node. All right. Now that's all set up properly. Right, now that we have this stuff done, we just need to find a way to save the game, right? And to save the game, we're gonna go back here to our button, and we can do a couple of things. So the first thing we can do here is that we are gonna go back to the graph. We're gonna bring in back the button, and I'm gonna bind the event. So bind ev button clicked, not unbind, sorry, bind ev. Yeah, now you notice that I don't really have an output node, so I just need to go back to here, put this one right there. Let me just align everything, and there you go. Beautiful. It's all done. I'm gonna put it right there. Now that is connected. I'm gonna create here a custom event called API save character, right? We're gonna save the character. That's the one you are gonna be able to play on our awesome MMO. Right, now the next thing we gotta do here is that we need to, well, realistically, we don't have the server part set up yet. That's gonna be a little bit complicated, but we can save our player, let's say, locally. So let's figure out the local version first, and then we figure out the server side of it. I want to make sure I have at least the character creation, maybe a little bit of the inventory, so we can start to send data to the server, because otherwise it's going to be just we working through code and it's not exciting, it's going to be boring. All right, so without taking too much time, we're going to basically now create, we're going to call a node here called save game to slot, right? Save game to slot, and then we need to select the slot and the index. Right, I'm not gonna be worrying too much about the index, even because in some platforms is ignored anyway. So what I'm gonna do here is when we press save game to the slot, I'm gonna put my save game right here, right? Now, one thing that I started to realize here is that we need to have a slot to save this data. So what we're gonna do here is that we're gonna create an Unreal Engine called Unreal Engine Global Functions. So basically, you have, I think I saw, yeah, we need to create this thing called Blueprint Function Library. And basically what that allows us to do is that allows us to reuse, let's say, game versions or things that it needs to be globally accessible on our game. We can just create a global function to bring this. In this case, I would like to make so my save game is always consistent and has the same name and all sorts. That's why I want to create a global function, because it doesn't make sense for me to hard code that. Remember, we're trying to get away from hard-coded things and try to make things very dynamic for our game. Right, so let's go, let me close this window. So we are gonna go back to our blueprints, and as the guys say that, we need to create a blueprint function library. So let's search here for blueprint functional library. And there are containers of functions to be used in other blueprints. It cannot contain variables inherit blueprints or can be placed in levels. So that's exactly what we need. And I am gonna call this BP, which stands for BP, and I'm gonna call this GB or for global. And I'm just gonna call this MMO framework. I don't have a name for our MMO yet, so I'm gonna framework. Right, now I'm gonna open up this super global function and I'm gonna call this fn GB, which it stands for global, or it could be GL. And let me just, I'm gonna save this. Instead of using GB, I'm gonna put GL because GB could be Great Britain, so it's not, yeah, not useful for this. So we have a function that's global, and now we need to get save game prefix. All right, and all this function is gonna do is just return a string for our save game prefix. This is gonna be a string, and the prefix that we're gonna return here, I am not sure, but I'm just gonna call this MMO framework dash, and then you have the save game 1, 2, 3, whatever we would like to use. Now we can close that. We're gonna go back to our game here, to our UI here. And now what we can do is that we can search for fn-gl and gl get save game prefix. And one thing I forgot to do on this function, very important thing, for things like this, I like to introduce you guys to a concept called pure, which is basically something that allows us to call a function without having to put nodes. Very easy to do, nothing complicated. I'm gonna open up this function. I'm gonna go back here, and I'm gonna go back to pure. And I am gonna tick this thing on. And now look how cool this thing is. Because we set that to pure, I don't need to execute this anymore. I can just plug stuff straight away. Now, what I'm gonna do here is that I am gonna call a concat, or it's called append, that's the thing that I'm looking for, append. And here I'm gonna append number 1. Realistically, this will need to be promoted to a variable called the save game slot. Do you know in games that sometimes you open up, which save you like to play? 1, 2, 3, and then that save has, the slots that you choose. Basically, that's what we're trying to do here. But in this way, we're gonna be for 1 to 10. You can create up to 10 characters, but which one would you like to select, right? Anyway, let's go back here. I am gonna plug this one right there, and I'm gonna just add a note for me saying to do update is to use save game slots name and number. Right, so now we can compile and save. And now we should be able to save the game. So the way you can test it to see if this is working or not is then we're gonna type that. I'm gonna press save. I know that it's doing something. Oh, it probably crashed my engine, but that's fine, because what we're looking for is that we want to see while the engine recovers. I just want to make sure that on our project, the MMO, and let me just start the engine again. Project that. While that's started, I want to make sure that in the save folder where we have the project set up, I want to make sure that if we have saved that data. So if I go back to saved, let's see here, auto saves, collection, and auto saves. I think that didn't work properly. But anyway, I'm just gonna restore selected. Okay. And now that I have the engine loaded, let's see if I can go back to my levels, character creation. Let me just reopen the things that I closed. That happens sometimes when you leave Unreal Engine running for a while. It doesn't like to stay open for long periods of time. Now, let me just double check that we have this set up properly. And here, is that the save still done? Yes. All right. So I'm just going to go back here. I'm going to type Mario. I'm going to press save. And as you can see, this time it worked properly. And I have a new folder here on my screen called Save Game. And there we go. I have my MMO saved right here. Now, you guys probably wonder, how does this thing work? So I'm just going to open this on my code editor on VS Code here. And I am just going to open up that here. I'm going to open anyway. Text editor, that's fine. And here you should be able to see my name here somewhere. There we go. So we have the name Mario. As you can see here, there's a bunch of gibberish, but you can see that we are saving the data. I know for a fact that there's like some extensions that allow us to read this data, but I just wanted to make sure that we are able to open up this stuff. All right, guys. So I think what I would do here is that for now, we can just, when we press save, I need to validate the player name. So to make sure that the player has a valid name. All right. So what we are going to basically do here is that I want to make sure, let me just put this one right here, that we can validate player name. So I'm going to go back here to the designer. All right. And what I would like to do here is I want to add a validation on this. I want to make sure this is valid. So I'm going to edit my widget. And on here, I want to make sure that if the player doesn't type the name, we display some kind of a validation. So what I mean is just going to duplicate this. Can I duplicate? Now I'm going to have to copy and paste. I'm going to put the label in the middle. This is going to be center. And I'm going to call this validation message, right? And I want to make sure that the validation message is like red. And the text is going to be like 12. It's quite small. Make sure it fills and is center. I think we have the justification. I want to make sure it's in the center. And it's going to be something like, please enter a valid name or something, right? So if I compile and save that, I want to make sure that when if you do a mistake, it will show this. Also, I can see that these things start to get a little bit problematic. So let me add a little bit more padding from the bottom. Let's add 10 here. Just because, but that's starting to cut. Maybe what I need to do is on the border. Maybe I can add 10. Or maybe 0. Or maybe from the bottom I can add, let's say, 10 or 0. Auto. Well, I'm gonna leave the way it was. I'll come back to that later on. Later on we can refactor this. But anyway, so the refactor message, right? I'm gonna leave this refactor message empty by default because I don't want that to show. And what I would like to do here is that I'm gonna go back to my graph. I'm gonna create here an event called custom event called API display validation message. All right. And all I want to do here is that I just want to get my text, which is right here. Drag it there. We're gonna set text. And here we're gonna plug it there. Nice. And I'm gonna set the text to whatever the text is coming from the validation message, which is the one I need to set up. And then after a delay of, let's say, maybe 3 seconds, we can just set this back to 0, to nothing, because we don't want that validation message to be displaying all the time. Right. So this will allow us now to validate the field, right? Because this is a very important part of RPG, is that you want to validate your field. All right. So now that we have done this, we can go back to here. When we press play, when we press save, I want to do something here. I want to basically check if the user or the player has typed something, right? And the way I can do that is that basically I can, before I save or do anything else, I want to make sure I get my save game, get the appearance, and I can break this, right? Now, I'm gonna convert this to string, right? The reason why I'm converting that to string is just because it's easy to count the length of the string. You can't really do that on text on Unreal. There's a way you can validate using different rules, but we just want to keep it simple here. And that will just work fine as well. It's a good thing. Now what I can do here is I can get the length. And first of all, we can just do a print here and check our length. I'm going to just unplug the save for now because I don't want to be saving data that I don't want to. So 0, if I type that, say 15. All right. That is actually really good, really great. Now, what we can do here is that I can basically create, if this thing is equal 0, that means that user hasn't been typed anything. We can even go beyond. We can probably set up the, I don't know, if you have your character needs to have more than 3 characters to validate. I think that's up to you. I'm just gonna make sure if it's 0, then whatever. I don't wanna create that. So if this is greater than 0, then we're gonna create a branch and we're gonna allow the user to proceed, right? But now what happens if that's not greater than 0? Now, what we do is that we get our API btn and we call the API validation message. Sorry, that's the button. Now we need to get the text. Get the text. API set validation set. Oh, I see what happened there. Because this is let me just double check. Edit API. It's called display. There we go. API display validation message, right? And the validation message here is that, I don't know, please type a valid name, or just call not valid name, right? And then we do something like that. Press play, do that, and if I press save, not valid name. Now we have to type this like blah blah blah, and then press save, and then that will save my character. Now what we have here is that we basically completed this section of the game. Now what we need to do here, guys, is that when we press save, we need now to basically reload the page. So not reload the page, send the user to a different screen, which is the main menu, or is the scene where you are after you logged in, which you have a list of character names, and you're gonna have your name right there, and then you're gonna be able to press play with that character. So that's what we're gonna be doing here in the next lesson. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and I see you in the next one.